Got a different rowing machine? No problem. Let's talk about it. I'm Cassie Neiman, a You Can Row 2 master rowing instructor, and I acknowledge that not everybody is going to have a Concept 2 row erg. Sometimes you might have a machine that looks more like this, and that's totally fine. What I want to show you today is that the fundamental basics of the rowing stroke are going to be the same. How you do it on your individual machine, there may be some little small tweaks, but overall it's still the same. So this is a way for you to kind of use the information that we put out and still apply it to whatever machine you may be rowing on. Because honestly, any machine is a great machine, okay? So when it comes to this machine and a lot of other machines that you might find besides the Concept 2 row erg, is that you can't adjust where your feet go. So basically we just need to make sure we get our feet in tight and that strap over our foot, but we can't adjust where that strap is, and that's just the way this machine works. What you will find is that these foot stretchers or these foot plates are gonna move with you, which kind of puts you in a less than effective position up at the catch, because now I'm pushing in a much more vertical direction versus keeping my feet here and pressing back. But we're gonna kind of go over that as we go. Just so you know, sometimes these foot plates are gonna move. So, and that just makes it more applicable, more usable by lots of different people with lots of different feet. The seat generally is going to be the same. It's going to move up and down a slide. Sometimes you have a steep incline back into the front. Sometimes it's a little more horizontal. This one's kind of right in the middle. The handle probably is just going to be a straight handle. I've actually switched this one out to a Concept 2 handle, so it's a little more comfortable for me, but it usually is just a straight handle. And again, that's all we need. The big difference between the Concept 2 row erg and a more magnetic machine, which is this one, is the kind of adjusting of this resistance. And usually on the Concept 2, I talk about the fact that the damper on the side or the drag is not the resistance. The resistance is actually gained by how much work you're putting into it, because that increases the airflow. In this case, it is the resistance. So there's a number here from 1 to 8. The higher that number, the more resistance, and it does not change based on how much work you put in. It's always gonna feel the same. So this machine doesn't respond in the same way, but it's still absolutely usable. The biggest bummer, I'll say, about this machine is that the monitor, the data I get, is not really helpful. It's gonna count my strokes. It's gonna give me kind of like a generic calorie output, and then it's going to give me a time. None of that is actually based on the work that I'm doing. So it's not actually determining how much force I'm producing, how much power I'm creating. It's really just counting my strokes. So that can be super helpful. I can still move through the positions, I can still work hard, and I can use different kind of ratings of exertion to figure out what I'm doing and where I need to be. But beyond that, just not a lot of data that ultimately is helpful for me to see long-term progress. But I can certainly get in a good workout and feel good while doing it and push that as I go forward, okay? So let's kind of talk about the rowing stroke. So we're gonna grab that handle. I still can grab that whichever handle it is out by the edges, and I can come into that finished position where I'm laying back just a little bit. So the movement back into the catch, that recovery is exactly the same. Arms come away, the body follows, so we've got the body angle over, and then I'm gonna bend the knees to come up into the catch. This is the point where things get different. I cannot compress as far on this machine and most other machines because the actual machine itself is in the way. My hands can't move any further. If I compress further, I start to compromise my body angle. So what you might find if you follow our videos, that you might find your stroke seems shorter, in that you come up to the catch, and as soon as your hands can't go any further, that's when we want to drive to the finish. Arms, body, legs, we get to this stopping point we drive the legs down, swing the body open, pull in the arms. Now, a lot of times what I see happening on these machines is kind of a compromise or a consequence of this finite compression, and that's the butt coming under because the seat can still move, right? So the butt comes under, and then what happens is we end up pushing back as we're pulling the handle and using our upper body instead of our legs. So my biggest kind of cue to anybody using a machine similar to this is to focus on that same order of operations through the recovery. And then as you get to the front, when your hands stop, that's also when your seat stops, okay? Or we could say that's when it changes direction. So when we get to this point, that's when the seat goes right back. So my stroke might seem a little shorter, but it is going to be stronger with the shortened recovery than it would be if I started to let my butt slide underneath me and then pull back in this movement pattern, right? We don't want to end up in this position. We want to keep our body over into the catch and then back through the drive. And your feet will move as they do as you come up into the catch, but we want to try and not let them get all the way into this more horizontal position. Same as if we were rowing on the Concept 2, we're trying to keep the heels close to that footboard, into that catch, so they can come right back down. And then as you're doing this, my suggestion would be figure out a way to find that perceived exertion, RPE. You can use lots of different scales, whether it's conversational pace, you could talk while rowing, you don't want to talk, right? As it increases, versus using that data. You can use the time, the stroke counts, and like I said, that calorie output probably isn't going to be helpful in the end. So, big things to think about, again, while you're on this machine, still that same order of operations, but probably a little shorter stroke in that my shins aren't going to be quite as vertical, but my hips are still gonna be behind my shoulders as I enter that drive. So, again, if you got one of these machines, great. It's something, right? And we can still do good work on it. You can still follow along with our videos, learn the right order of operations, and get as much as possible out of your stroke. Doesn't have to mean that it looks totally different or you're doing something else. You're still on our crew, all right? So let me know if that was helpful.